Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Cardano and its native token, ADA. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. We also do have the ITC, ITC2, and ITC3 stake pools. So if you want to earn interest on your ADA, or if you want to earn rewards on your ADA, I should say, make sure you go stake with those three pools. And yes, they are all eligible for the Sunday Swap ISO. Now, forgive me if the quality is a little bit worse than normal. I just got a new laptop and I'm trying to figure out how it works. Do remember that it takes me about 2 years or so to figure out some of the audio and visual stuff. So just bear with me for a couple more years here. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump in and see what ADA is doing. Now, one of the things we've said before about ADA is, it seems like it's more or less been range bound for quite a long period of time, and ADA certainly goes through stages where it doesn't really seem like it does anything. And this isn't really new. This is kind of what it does, right? It goes through these stages where it doesn't really do anything for a long time. And if you're thinking that $1.57 ADA is now the definition of doing something, then unfortunately your expectations still remain somewhat low, and it's probably just because we haven't really seen anything in quite a long time. But again, I assure you, no one's really getting out of bed for a 157 ADA. Now, let me say this. I mean, clearly there's some hype here around the Sunday Swap ISO, and there could be some price appreciation. The short-term price appreciation is probably attributed to that. At least there's a decent chance, right? It's one of those things we can't really prove one way or another, right? But it does seem likely that it is related to that. And so I think the general thing to think about here is, well, what are the main limiting factors for ADA to continue moving higher? And if we could see those things get worked out, then hopefully we'd see ADA move higher. Number one is Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin controls the relative health of the market. If Bitcoin's trending down, it makes it harder for other coins to trend up. It doesn't mean they can't. And in fact, over the last couple of days, Bitcoin has been trending down while ADA has been trending up. But you have to imagine a world if Bitcoin tomorrow goes to 40K and then the next day it's at like 38K and then at 36K or something like that. It will make it very difficult for other cryptocurrencies to perform exceptionally well, just because we know it controls the health of the market. And normally when Bitcoin is below the 20-week SMA, then you just don't generally have super high expectations for altcoins, right? That's just what we've seen before. And I think we've seen that play out many, many times. Now, the other thing I think that will sort of determine some of the price action here for ADA is how successful these things that are launching actually are, right? Do they go off without a hitch? I would encourage people to temper their expectations in the short term, like anything. When you have something coming out, there's going to be bumps along the way. And this is one of the things we said when ADA launched smart contracts back in 2021. That, look, while they are launching smart contracts, we said, it's probably going to be a while before we actually see the ecosystem start to thrive, because it's going to take people actually time to build on top of it. And now we're getting to the beginning stages. So again, it's a long-term move, right? I mean, I'm not here to day trade ADA or anything like that. But when we look at it for what it is, we see ADA has mostly been range bound here for about a year, which is not unlike what we saw other cryptocurrencies do in the prior market cycle. Again, we saw Ethereum go sideways for a year back in 2016. It basically just went sideways for the entire year, despite the fact that we would think that the 2015 to 2018 was only up for Ethereum. There were certainly phases where it did nothing but go sideways. And I think the thing to watch for ADA here is, of course, there's that bull market support band, which we are coming up to right now, which ranges, by the way, from a very modest 164 up to 181. So, you can look at that as some short-term resistance if we can get above 164 up to 181. So naturally, if we're trending higher than, if we're trending up to $2, then we are getting back above this band. So that would obviously be an area to look out for. But furthermore, one of the things we've said before is, what you can't control in this market, right? You can't control Bitcoin. We know we can't control Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin is going to bleed, or whatever it's going to do, whether it bleeds or whether it goes up, you always want to look at the relative valuation of your altcoins with respect to Bitcoin and with respect to Ethereum, because we know that like if Bitcoin goes down, ADA will likely trend down in the short term with it. If Bitcoin goes up, ADA will trend up with it more than likely. Again, Bitcoin kind of drags the market. But then you also get the idiosyncratic risk of each individual altcoin in addition to the market risk. And so when you take that into consideration, of course, you have to go look at the ADA Bitcoin valuation. And when you go look at this, it clearly shows that, look, I mean, at least in the short term, ADA Bitcoin is in an uptrend. We have taken out, the low, at least, that we saw back in August of 2021, and we are ultimately trending higher. And, I imagine that 5,000 Satoshis could be some headwinds here. I mean, right now, we're still pretty far away from that. We'd have to go up significantly to get to that point. I mean, from this level, about 31 or 32%, which is not an easy thing necessarily to do given these market conditions. Okay, so again, with Bitcoin flirting with $42,000 and below the 20-week SMA, we know the risk that's involved. But I think looking at ADA ETH tells an interesting story. And one of the reasons is because the area that we bounced off of, we've shown this many times before, is sort of the same area we've seen some support and resistance at in the past. And now we've yet again bounced off of this area. And historically, when we saw a bounce off of this area, we actually went up to, a little bit higher than where we are today. I mean, for instance, if we were to go up from the current valuation up to where we often tend to make it, it would mean that ADA could still go up approximately 15% more against ETH before really facing some headwinds there. So look, in the short term, I would say ADA looks great. You have the Sunday Swap ISO coming out. Obviously, it's got a lot of momentum right now, at least on the weekly time frame. You can see last week. And if we go over and say look at the Heiken Ashi candles, I imagine it's starting to tell a similar story. Right? You can see it's already turned green. But before everyone schedules their Forbes interview on ADA, which again I'm excited. We've been waiting forever for it to do something, and it still really isn't doing anything. I mean, it's still at 155, but remember that it is ultimately dependent on what Bitcoin does. Okay, and so the best thing you can do if you have altcoins is to be fair to yourself and say, you know what? Don't judge it based on its USD valuation when Bitcoin's in a downtrend. Judge it based on how it performs against Bitcoin and against Ethereum when Bitcoin is in that downtrend. That's the key thing, I think, to consider when navigating crypto. Because if you evaluate against the US dollar, it's basically just dependent on what Bitcoin's doing, more or less. Okay, if Bitcoin were up at 47K right now, then ADA perhaps would already be at $2. But the fact that it's sitting at 42K is certainly causing some pause for the rally that ADA is in fact trying to experience. So I did want to just come on and say, you know what? Look, price looks good. We'd like to see ADA at 155. At the same time, we know the risks involved, right? The risk is Bitcoin. The risk is the launch of all these platforms and to see how they actually hold up. Personally, I'm in it for the long haul, and I'll just wait and continue along and see what happens. But this is certainly not something I'm going to be playing in the short term. So again, hopefully you guys like the content. I mean, we'll see if we can actually get this breakout above the bull market support band. Typically, when Bitcoin is in a downtrend, you learn to temper your expectations so that you're not disappointed. So I would just say, look, if we're still holding in this range, I would count it as a win. And really, to get an idea of what ADA can do, we got to keep an eye on what Bitcoin is doing. And unfortunately, we've just been looking at a downtrend here for the last 2 months. Okay, so ideally, we'd like to see that break. If we can see that break and start trending higher, then I would say ADA is definitely in business. If it keeps coming down, then it will put a damper on ADA's parade in the short term. So again, hopefully you guys like the content. If you do, subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and stake your ADA with the ITC stake pools. Thank you for tuning in, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.